Much aloha, family. Much aloha to the tribe. Hope everybody had a good winter break, as it were. Now that we kind of take care of some things and kind of had a moment to ourselves, it's time to get back into the classroom and move forward with getting this lesson and in our search for indigenous truth. Hope everyone's been doing well. Hope everyone is blessed. Sorry for my absence. If you are watching this classroom on YouTube and what have you, from those who only follow on YouTube, there may seem like there is a gap of information between videos, but the fact of the matter is that outside of personal business, as it were, I've been over on 432 The Drop radio, where I've been spending a lot of my time surfing the wave challenge, getting the drop live and in living color, and participating there. For those who don't know, my show on TDR is at 7 o'clock p.m. and that's Pacific Standard Time, and where a lot of the drops have been going down. Today, we're going to keep it simple, and we're going to get into what I would deem or title Zion, Prester John, and You. Now, before we begin, oh man, all right, Brother King just dropped another drop. Before we begin, just want to show some ahab to Brother King, Brother Hiram, to Aqua Tide Battle, Aqua, Miss D, to Brother Isaac, to Karameu, Brother Silas, to Big Brother Nature, CJ Battle and the rest of the Battle family, and all those who've been surfing the wave. If you are not informed, as of recently, Sister V was in an accident. So on the Drop Radio, on the website, make sure you go show some love, show some support. She is safe, from my understanding. All is well. She'll be getting back on the road, and let's keep her in our prayers. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to jump into a book called The Other Zions, and we're not going to go too deep into it. We're going to read about a page or two, and depending on how much time I have left, we'll get into that, into some other things, and continue to move forward. Now on the screen, you have the symbols for the 12 tribes of Israel. And each symbol, represents a tribe. And this here is a mosaic, so that you guys can kind of get a feel of the artistic works, and at the same time, I hope that it's a reminder to stay grounded. So with that being said, let's get into it. Now this is coming, we're going to start off here in this book on page 27, near the end. We're going to read through 27, the rest of 27 there. We're going to read through 28 Hawa and part of 29. And what I'm going to do here is hopefully illustrate the confusion that comes with reading this type of book. You've been regulated to legend. You are being erased from the history books. Hawa. You are being told that you're from one place, yet you're from another. All these things that are in conflict with who and what you are, but you're told to believe and accept. So what we're going to do here is we're going to read through this, and because we have foundation, because we have been reading various books, doing our scholarly work, we are going to have a better understanding than the typical layman, okay? And please, by all means, you can reach me via email or leave a comment or however you wish to contact me. If you catch any hijacked in this that I may have missed, please, by all means, inform me and let me know. So, again, this book here is called The Other Zions. All right, so let's begin. The letter of Prester John was immensely popular. It circulated in manuscript form, in numerous versions, and in multitude of languages. When printing was invented, it was published in small chapbooks, or inexpensive, cheaply printed books meant for mass markets. As the Middle Ages came to a close, and Europeans began to explore and exploit the wider world, they looked for Prester John everywhere. When the Portuguese began their explorations of Africa in the 15th century, which is the 1400s, okay, they fully expected to stumble upon Prester John's kingdom. Natives along the coast told stories of a powerful king who ruled from inland and did not show his face but sat behind a curtain. This great king had to approve the succession of kings and leaders on the coast. This fueled interest of the Portuguese. They finally decided that Prester John could dwell no other place than Ethiopia, for it was well known that a Christian monarch ruled that nation. Stories circulated that in the mountains and highlands in the inland of Ethiopia, there was an independent Jewish kingdom, and that the Ethiopian Christian monarch and the Jewish king waged periodic fierce wars. Now we're going to stop right there real quick because I want to catch a couple of the hijacks that are in here. We're going to drop them off in fairly short order. Now, one of the things that you're going to notice is that there is a lot of similar stories that you've heard, but let's just keep it simple here. Now, first and foremost, it says when the Portuguese began the explorations of Africa in the 14th century, right? They fully expected to stumble upon Prester John's kingdom. Okay. Now, let's look at this here. Now, the Portuguese knew that the king of Ethiopia was a Christian monarch. Okay? It was well known that a Christian monarch ruled that nation. But yet, they didn't know who Prester John was. Now, real quick, what we're going to do is we're going to pull up some maps and take a look at this, because I want to catch this lie right in here, because I want to show you the difference and confusion with the histories, and we're going to get more into it. Now, let's take a look at this first map here. Now, this first map here is a map, and I happen to luckily find this map, which is actually marked, if you can see that, 1489, which is important. Okay. Now, this is what they understood the world to be. Now, Portugal is here. Okay? Now, it's a small seafaring skip and a jump from here to here into Africa. Okay? Even with boating around. Okay? But understanding that this is a map in 1489, you can see that they had no clue or desire or knowledge of anything beyond this realm. Now, if you notice, zoom on this a little bit, if I can. If you notice, Ethiopia, as is understood, should be around in here somewhere, because here's the Nile River. So we're looking around in here somewhere, okay? Basically. But it's unmarked on the map. Now, when we do some further reading as we continue, we're going to notice some other things. But I wanted to show you their understanding of the world in Portugal, 1489. Okay? Now, this is going to really trip you out, but let's continue. Now, check this out. Let's see here. Now, I want to can focus on this word here. So, they, meaning the Portuguese, finally decided that Prester John can dwell no other place than Ethiopia. And that's something that's true and persistent to this day. Okay? Now, let's see here. We go down. Now, if you notice, they say that let's see, where was it? Stories also circulated that the mountains and highlands in the inland of Ethiopia, there was an independent Jewish kingdom, and that the Ethiopian Christian monarch and the Jewish king waged periodic and fierce wars. Now, the reason why I want to stop here is because we have an understanding of Judah and Israel. They fell out. There's two different kingdoms, and they were at war. As we understand that the real Judah is here, underneath your feet, and we read the Bible, and we do the histories of the Inca conquest into the Mayan territories. These similar stories of family members warring with each other. Let us continue. As we will see in the next chapter, Ethiopia was a fine candidate for Prester John's empire. But when Europeans' familiarity with the country improved, the match seemed less apt, and explorers and conquerors in the Americas looked for the elusive Prester John in the rainforest of Mesoamerica in search for the lost tribes among the quote-unquote Red Indians. Now, let's go to another map, because when I was looking at this, I tried to see a map of Hawaii, a map of the Ethiopia in that time frame. Okay? Now, just to show you by comparison, let's see here. This map here is what they call what's it called? This is the map that was used by Christopher Columbus, or is credited to Christopher Columbus, Hawaii. And again, you can see how skewed the actual lines and borders are. Again, Portugal will be up here. Okay? And here's the Red Sea, here's the Nile River, here's Egypt, here's Africa. Okay? Just kind of give you a hint. But again, no Ethiopia. Now, this map here, let me zoom in on this here for you guys real quick. If y'all can see that, this map here was was created in 1858. Okay, so we have a more accurate layout of the continent, but I want you to notice what we have here. That the information of Ethiopia is skewed, to say the least. Now, here they have Ethiopia, right? Now, in big old letters, going right across it, it says unexplored region. In the center of Ethiopia, unexplored region. Which brings me to ask the question, well, how in the hell will you know these other cities and lakes and stuff was called if this is an unexplored region? But notice how the Ethiopia ranges all the way from New Guinea all the way over here. Now you have Somalia here. I can't really make that out there, but notice here how this is Ethiopia, all right? And here is Abyssinia, okay? Abyssinia lies in south or lower Egypt. You gotta go through Egypt here. This is Egypt here. Here's Nubia. Underneath Nubia, then we get into Abyssinia. But let's go back up. There's Portugal. All right. There's Spain. Barbara. All right. I want y'all to pay attention to this and understand what's being said here by the scholars. Let's continue. Hebrew translations of Prester John's letters were made, which were read by Jews with keen interest. Of course, they were less interested in the fabled Christian monarch than they were in the kingdom of Jews beyond his territory. As we will see in the next chapter, beginning in the 13th and 14th centuries, okay, which is the 12 and 1300s, wars between Beta Israel, or the Jews of Ethiopia, and successive Christian monarchs brought Ethiopian slaves into Middle Eastern and European markets well into the 15th century. Slow down, stop. So some of you guys maybe are wondering, what's Beta Israel? Beta Israel is what they call the Jews of Ethiopia. Again, two different things to a point, but the reason why they call it Beta Israel is because they don't match the phenotypes, location, place names of those who are considered Jews. Okay? And this is when we get into the Khazars, the imposters, as it were, being recognized as the main branch or bloodline of Israel. And the conflict that comes with that, when you have a different group of people of a different classification, ethnicity, culture, and that ethnicity and culture actually seems more connection, a greater connection to the historical facts. But in any case, now these Jews of Ethiopia, now these Christian monarchs brought Ethiopian slaves into Middle Eastern and European markets. Well, Middle Eastern, let's go back to our map. People, the Middle East is here. Still a part of Africa. Okay? Still a part of Africa, but they call this the Middle East over here. Alright? Now, these quote-unquote Ethiopian slaves were into this market and up here into Europe. Now, isn't it funny that the other Jews weren't being brought in as slaves? And the reason why I want to bring this up here is because if you've been taken a slave, you're going to try to do your best to hold on to your history, your culture, memory of you being taken. And when you have two different groups claiming the same thing, but one's enslaved and the other one is not, then all of a sudden it becomes a lot easier to push one into the region of legend. Okay. Now, some quote unquote black Jews sold on that market, told tales of their wars. And this added fuel to the stories about Prester John and the independent Jews of his kingdom, who were imagined to be none other than the lost tribes. Now, again, it's kind of funny that as we've done our homework on Prester John, knowing that they're from here, we're talking about here, and the confusions in the timelines, that of course they would be independent, okay? Prominent rabbis and scholars discussed the Jewish kingdom in distant Ethiopia in Letters and Responsa in 1488 in the Common Era. Okay, we're going to pay attention to that. That's why I wanted to bring up the map that says 1489. The famous commentator on the Mishnah, Rabbi Obadiah of Bertinaro, wrote a letter from Jerusalem explaining the situation in Prester John's kingdom. So now, let's check this out. Let's go back to our map here of the time. So we have the Portuguese consigning people with knowledge of Prester John and to get information. And we're going to dig into that a little bit here, but I wanted to bring that up because let's go back to our map. If Portugal's here, and this is the quote-unquote location of Judah, that means that they got Hawa. That means they got information from here to here about Prester John. But in here to here where Ethiopia is, no one really knows what the hell's going on. Okay. But we clearly have a map, right? I want to show you that. Now this is again 1488. Wow. All right. Now, there had been a great battle between the Jews and Christians and Prester John. Now, notice how that is worded by the Rabbi Obadiah. When we do our homework and we study Prester John and everything we come across, we know that there were a lot of wars and battles going on between tribes and things of that nature. But in the grand scheme of things, it's been, when we study Prester John, it's always been about a three-way war. You have these the Christians, and then you have the quote-unquote Muslims or Mohammedans, and then you have Prester John and his kingdom. And from the perspective of the Mohammedans, they seem to be side by side from one perspective of history with those of Prester John's army and people against the Christians. Then in other histories we read that it's the Christians and Prester John against the Mohammedans. But as we dig in deeper into the story and history of Prester John, we realize that he wasn't down with either hijack. And that can cause a historical problem, because we know that history is written by the victors, as they say. Okay? But let's continue. There had been a great battle between the Jews, Christians, and Prester John. Nearly exterminated them, the Jews, and the small remainder was subjected by him to great vexation. But with God's mercy, other kings arose in India. And here the wide sense of India is being used, less cruel than their predecessors, and the Bnei Israel were able to lift up their heads and increase in number. They still pay tribute to Prester John, but are not subject to persecutions. Now notice, we did a whole jump from Ethiopia to India, okay? And he puts in here, the rabbi puts in here, or the author himself, here is the wider sense of India being used. So let's go back to the map. India is here. But we're talking about a wider sense of India. I mean, what are we talking about? The furthest India, maybe? Because obviously it ain't here, because if it was here, they have a map of what's going on over here. Remember, this map, I'll show you again, is almost identical to the one that Christopher Columbus used, who was consigned by the Portuguese monarchs to explore. All right? To find this India, this furthest India. Okay? Let's go back. Let's see here. Now, I find it funny. It says here that other kings arose in India. Okay? Less cruel than their predecessors. Now, that kind of brings back, I believe it was in your Second Kings, in Second Chronicles and stuff, those histories, that following Solomon, you had a lot of bad kings, just keep it simple, who were very cruel and unholy. Now, Rabbi Obadiah continues to explain that some 40 years ago, some of the Ethiopian Jews were brought as prisoners to be sold in Egypt. He saw them, and they were as dark as Cushites, Ethiopians. Now, who was the king of Cush? If you've been riding a wave, you should know the answer to who was the king of Cush. Alright? Now, here's the irony. This Rabbi Obadiah explains for some 40 years ago. 40 years ago from what? 1488. That will put us exactly at 1448. Okay? Just 4 years before Dumb Diverses or Doom Diverses. Okay? And not only that, he saw that they were being sold as prisoners in Egypt. Let's go back to our map. So here's Egypt. So this Obadiah, right, Rabbi Obadiah, said he saw them here. But apparently, the quote-unquote Ethiopia that he was familiar with can't be this Ethiopia that's resting down here somewhere. Okay? They were similar but different. Okay? And the only thing that he could relate to was the Cushites. Okay? Obadiah explains. Now remember, all this is going down, right? Let's go back up a little bit. Where did it go? Now remember, but when Europeans' familiarity with the country improved, the match seemed less apt, and explorers and conquerors in the Americas looked for the elusive Prester John in the rainforests of Mesoamerica in search for the lost tribe among the what? Red Indians. Okay. Alright. Now, Christopher Columbus allegedly took sail in 1492. Okay. Which is 4 years after this Rabbi Obadiah made his famous comments, right? Okay, and we have the map that you're exploring something, but you don't know what, or don't know where. Now, Obadiah explains that the captives had been from the tribe of Dan. This identification would prove important to the Jews of Ethiopia, for when the Beta Israel were declared Jews by the rabbinical authorities in the state of Israel, paving the way for their eventual migration to the Jewish state. One of the precedents cited was the rulings and observations of Obadiah of Bertinaro. Now, I want you to pay attention to this. Now again, Beta Israel is the Jews of Ethiopia. Now, it's kind of funny to me that the Jews of Ethiopia, okay, because of Obadiah, the Jews of Ethiopia were declared by rabbinical authorities in the state of Israel. So here's the question. In 1448, where's the state of Israel? Okay, you have to find the location for that. But at the same time, if these people, the Jews of Ethiopia, were the real Jews of the lost tribe, of the tribe of Dan, that means they actually have more connection, more authority. Yet, these so-called Jews, the one that's in rabbinical authority, is the ones who actually declared them, saying, it's okay for these people of color to be Jews. Now, let's continue. The well-known Kabbalist Abraham Levi the Elder wrote a letter from Jerusalem in 1528, Common Era concerning the lost tribes, and used terms and descriptions that were similar to the political and military situations of the Jews of Ethiopia at the time. He wrote, Phalasa is a strong kingdom of Jews who are valiant and dwell in tents. Their land is large and situated in high mountains, so that no one dares to go to war with them. As we will see in the next chapter, Phalasha was a pejorative name for the Jews of Ethiopia. Here, Abraham Levi confuses the group name with a place name. Abraham Levi confuses the group name with a place name. Okay? We will also see how the Beta Israel used mountain strongholds to fight Christian monarchs of Ethiopia. Again, the date 1528 of the Common Era corresponds roughly to a period of intense warfare between Beta Israel and the Christian Ethiopian royal house. Okay, now this is again in 1528. So let's see here what I got here for you guys. So we looked at that one already, right? 1528. Let's go to the next one. So this here, if you guys can see this clearly or not, I'm not certain, but from what I can see, it looks like this says 1303, but it may look different to you guys. Here's a stylized S, which looks like an F. This is Russia, okay? And Portugal will be here. Take a note of the banners, the symbols, okay? The tents. Remember, Egypt should be here. Jerusalem should be here. Ethiopia is off screen. Let's see the next one I got here for us. And now here's another map. This map here is dated 1873. Okay. Okay, now we have more of the Americas. Okay. Being listed. Peru. Alright. Jerusalem over here. Okay. I want you guys to have an understanding, and we kind of covered this with our work studying Anatoly Fomenko when it comes down to the different maps and the details and the years being off. And if we got enough time here, I might dismount, but then again, I might not. don't know yet. So let's continue. All right, now this is only 1528 is 40 years after the other gentleman here, Rabbi Obadiah from 1488. Now let's continue. These letters are intriguing, for in them we can see important Jewish scholars of the day wrestling with the idea of a Jewish polity in the land of Prester John. There is certainly a great deal of fable and legend in the letters, mostly fashioned or refashioned from the accounts given by Eldad Ha-Dani some 400 years earlier and given a new expression in the Prester John legend. Now, let's go back a little bit. Now, 400 years earlier, from, let's go with the first date here, 1528 brings us to what? 1128, right? If we go back to this one, it brings us to what? 1088. And if I remember correctly, let's see here, pull this up real quick, bring up my notations and times in history. Let's go back to it. 1089, David gets the throne, right? 1088, some 300 years. All right. So, let's see here. Where were we? Now, what we need to do is do a little bit more homework on this Eldad Ha-Dani. Okay. Now, here it is. Now, let's read this again. There's certainly a great deal of fable and legend in the letters, mostly fashioned or refashioned, right, from the accounts given by Eldad. Okay. Now, it is important to realize that while Obadiah Bertinoro and Abraham Levi were quite interested in the Jews of Prester John's land, they were not surprised by their existence or by the fact that they had an independent kingdom. That should really tell you or give you insight into these two commentaries at the time, as far as what they actually thought of these lost tribes. But real quick, before to dismount, what I want to do here is I'm going to let's look up a quick word here, which is polity. So I don't want no one to be confused on what a polity is, and we're gonna go from there. First, let's start off with typical Google. Polity. A form or process of civil government or constitution, an organized society, a state as a political entity. Okay? Let's go to the Webster's Dictionary. Polity. The form or constitution of a civil government of a nation or state, and in free states, the frame or fundamental system by which several branches of government are established, and the powers and duties of each designated and defined. Each branch of our civil, that's just an example. The Constitution or general fundamental principles of government of any class of citizen considered in an appropriate character or as a subordinate state. Okay, so let's go to the etymology, and this would be our dismount. Polity. (1530s), from Middle French politi, 15th century, or directly from late Latin polita, organized government. See policy. Okay. So when we are talking about the polity, okay, there was a Jewish polity in the land of Prester John, okay. They were wrestling with the idea of a Jewish polity, okay. But remember, there is certainly a great deal of fable and legend in the letters, mostly fashioned and refashioned from the accounts given by Eldad Hadani some 400 years earlier. So what we're going to do here is we're going to leave off with one final video, and we might pick it up with another video. But I want you guys to pay attention to this. Hawa. The name of this is called. The publisher is New Earth. The Survivors, 7 through 1,000 Fabricated Years, Isaac Newton and Other Supporters of True History. This is kind of low, so I'm going to put it on closed caption, and we're going to ride out to the end with this, and pay close attention. And just to show you, I'll show you some Black ass King James, right? Black ass King James. You notice this? Can you see this okay? I-608. But it's now been interpreted as 1608. Now when he comes out with the Bible, 1611, that's a 1. So when you get your King James version, you go from 608 to 1611. So when we go back and read these historians from this time period and their issue or confusion, is self-explanatory. Much ahab, family. Much love to the tribe. Shabbatah. Halel Hawa. Halel Hawa. Peace.